Joined now by Justin Goldman, who is wearing, for those of you who are not watching the YouTube video, is wearing a hat that says E-Bug. He is the emergency, or one of the emergency backup goalies for the Colorado Avalanche. Justin, thank you for joining us.
I'm so glad I was able to make it.
Stoked to have you here. We've been really excited about this interview for a while. How on earth do you get involved in the emergency backup goalie program?
If you hang around for long enough, eventually you're going to get a shot. And
so you're saying I've got a chance?
You definitely have a chance. That is the great thing about this emergency backup role. No, I've been very fortunate to be involved in pro hockey for going on 15 years now. And many, many years ago, there was a DJ by the name of Uncle Nasty who used to appear on a radio station, KBPI, huge hockey fan. And I was actually coaching his son, who was playing at the University of Denver. The kid was like 5 or 6 years old, and comes up to me after the game. He's like, "Hey, man, what's up?" And we just started talking, and next thing you know, that he's having me on his radio show to talk about the Avalanche, just about pre-games and what's going on next. And we would do a 5-minute, interview and talk hockey, and that was it. And so I started doing that and got involved in covering hockey locally, and just like I said, been hanging around long enough to where I was able to develop really good relationships with a lot of the not just the Avs players and some of the staff members, but people that were involved in the front office and would play beer league hockey with some of these guys, and they always knew I was a very avid goalie, and been covering goalies for a really long time. Used to write for NHL.com, and I've written a couple books on goaltenders, so I've just been hanging around a long time, and they knew I was here. And when the league came down with this new rule, I was contacted by someone at the Avs, and the opportunity presented itself, and I just was like, oh my gosh, yes, first of all. And before I was able to put 2 and 2 together, the next thing I knew, this was the deal. They got a group of goalies that were pretty high-level beer league guys. I think one of the rules was you weren't allowed to have ever played professional hockey before, but you had to have at least played club hockey at the college level or higher. And I played a couple of games for Colorado State University back in 2001. And so I was barely eligible, and I took it and ran with it, and here we are.
I was going to say, did they run you through a test? Did they have Nathan McKinnon shoot on you for a while and just see how that works?
Thank goodness, no. What's really cool is that every NHL team kind of handles it differently, I guess. And so for the Avalanche, there was no tryout or anything like that. I wish there was. I know that would have been really cool. But just the fact that they were able to reach out to someone like myself, who, again, had been involved in pro hockey for many years and had been hanging around and doing some radio stuff here and there, just to get the opportunity, I think was amazing. And it was so cool how the Avs kind of made it happen, just reaching out to us and giving us this opportunity and telling us what it was all about. And of course, me and my buddies who got the gig that first year were just blown away. We couldn't comprehend it. It was just one of those things that you've been dreaming about, your whole life, an opportunity to somehow end up in an NHL game. And then when it hits you and it's real, you're just like, oh my gosh, you feel like the luckiest man alive. And that's kind of how I felt. It's just been an insane experience, but something that I'll treasure forever and just absolutely relish for the rest of my life.
Back up for a second. You were talking about the new rule, and when did that come into effect? Do you remember?
So I think it was 3 seasons ago, and what had happened was there was a game with the Florida Panthers, and the goalies were Roberto Luongo and James Reimer. And Roberto Luongo went down with an injury, serious injury. I think it was almost like a broken collarbone. So he was out. So James Reimer goes into the game, and I'm pretty sure that was the backup goalie. Excuse me if I'm wrong. But James Reimer, I believe, was the backup, goes in the game, and he gets cramps or something like that. And so he can't play, and there's no one else there with goalie gear. So what ended up happening is they had to stop the game for 10 or 15 minutes. You can imagine TV broadcasting and all the rules and everything else, just everyone's going nuts.
TV broadcasting, what's that?
And so the story goes, the goalie coach for the Florida Panthers was Rob Tallis, and he had played in the NHL previously. He goes down into the locker room, grabs Roberto Luongo's gear, since Luongo was absolutely done, and he gets suited up, and he gets ready to go into the game, and the refs are like, no. And so there's just this mass confusion, I think, with not only the teams, but the referees, and I don't even remember what happened after that, but that was what I think kind of instigated this new rule that, man, we have to have at least someone here that can fill in case not only the first goalie goes down, but the second goalie can't play as well. Like, we can't just have this huge stoppage and this mass hysteria or this mayhem or whatever. Like, we got to find someone that can at least step in. And then all of a sudden, this new rule came through that I believe, and obviously I'm not sure how, like, if it's word for word, but basically every NHL team is responsible for having someone in the stands that can sign that emergency contract if they're called upon to step in and back up for, you know, the remainder of a game or for a period or whatever the case may be.
And that was going to be my question is, do you have a like pre-signed contract that I'm available to do this, or do you actually sign it in the locker room while you're getting dressed?
I think you sign it in the locker room while you're getting dressed, because we've all heard about the Scott Foster story.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you guys are familiar with
Chicago
that.
Blackhawks, right?
I mean, how do you live up to that now? Like, the guy goes in and stops all 7 shots, and it's like, well, great, you know, like, if I fall on my face, yeah, right? Shutout in 14 or 15 minutes of hockey. And
yeah,
so,
that's something.
I've seen a lot of things in pro hockey over the years, and I don't think I will ever see anything quite as amazing as that moment. Obviously, I'm biased because it's a goalie situation, but man, the odds of that happening and for him to just go in and make those saves. But to get back to the question, like, yeah, I think that's how it works, but I'm sure it's different in every instance, just depending on, you know, what's going on or what the situation is or how urgent it is. But yeah, maybe it'll happen at some point for me. I don't know.
This is, and I understand if you can't answer this question. Yeah. How does the money work? Do you get like a percentage of what an entry level contract was based on like hours of play? Or
yeah, and like doing my crack research here on eBug rules, I believe it is $500 if you actually have to dress and go on the bench. And then of course you get to keep the jersey and you get some awesome stuff from the players and some handshakes and stuff like that. But I believe that's what it is if you do actually have to dress and sign a contract as an emergency backup goalie for the remainder of that game, you do get $500. And I don't know if that's changed. I hear some different things. And again, I think it's just different on every occasion depending on the situation and what team it is and all that stuff.
So do you have a number picked out, like reserved for you just in case?
If I had to choose, it would be number 30. That's just the number I've played with. But I'm sure
that's
I'd
a
be
goalie
getting
number, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd be getting like X-8 or something super, super bizarre, whatever, 98. Who knows? Yeah. I'm guessing they have like an extra jersey that just needs like a back plate added to it. But man, these situations are so rare when actually someone has to dress. That I mean, I think it's a great rule. Obviously, I think it's a great rule, but it's just bizarre, and it's really hard to find information on like what exactly happens because it is so rare when it does go down. But it seems like every season there's more and more goalies getting hurt, and there's more and more of these situations where goalies want some time off during practices, and so that emergency goalie will go in and just fill in during practices, and that would be a dream as well.
I was saying, you've never done that.
No. I've this is my 3rd season being one of the emergency backup goalies for the Avalanche. I've not been called to practice or obviously get dressed, but there were probably 4 or 5 instances a couple seasons ago where some of the emergency backup goalies did have to at least get dressed during Avalanche games because of goalies on the other team getting hurt. And so that's one of the cool rules, is that you're eligible for both teams. So even if, like, let's say Arizona coming into town, they're playing against the Avs and Antti Raanta gets hurt, we're eligible to wear the Coyotes jersey as well. So pretty bizarre.
5-minute swing from being in the stands rooting for the Avs to try to stop them.
Right. And please, no, I don't want to be facing McKinnon or Landeskog,
No.
on and
probably
on
not on the other side either. You probably don't want to face some of those shooters on the other side.
No, and obviously I've been really lucky to, be on the ice with some of these guys at different goalie camps and stuff like that. And just being on the ice with them, it is incredible how skilled they are. They are machines, and they're amazing athletes. And the ability for them to not just have the eye-hand coordination, but to do it at that pace with that much pressure on them, with 18,000 people screaming at them to score all the time. I mean, it's remarkable, and utmost respect for anyone involved in pro hockey at any level, which is easy for me to say being a beer leaguer, but it's amazing. And just being at these games, at these Avalanche games, the speed that this team has is awesome.
It's
really
fun
awesome
to watch. If you've ever, I was on the ice level of an Avs practice because I was at an open skate, a stick and puck at Family Sports Center right before the Avs took the ice, and I was in the locker room getting undressed and I'd come out with my gear, and I'm walking out, and these guys are on the ice, and I'm thinking like, man, I thought that was moving fast before. This is moving really fast.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how different it is watching from the stands, and then you're on the ice level, and it's just, it's like 10 times, it's magnified times 10. It's amazing.
But I would never have to face these guys. You would.
See, and and sometimes I'm like, I catch myself thinking about it, and the anxiety definitely ramps up. And the whole day I feel like that. So whenever I do, you get your schedule at the beginning of the season. So I know what my schedule is in advance, which is nice. And it's cool because we get to kind of pick the games that we want. And all 5 of us are really good friends. And it's just a great, cool experience. We're like, oh, you got the next game. You got this game. What's going on? And if we have to fill in, so there could be a chance where we need an emergency backup for the emergency backup. That's always kind of fun.
Somebody gets sick or something like that.
Right. And we're there to fill in and make sure, we're handling our duties as professionally as possible. We do take it very seriously. It is an absolute honor to have this opportunity. But yeah, it's a very anxious ridden day, especially, I've got my 9-to-5 job at MindSpark Learning, and yeah, you're thinking about it all day. There's not a minute that doesn't go by where you're like, oh my gosh, this could happen. And obviously we all know the odds are so slim, but you do not want to get caught unprepared if it does happen. So you have to have that mindset, just like you're going into any real game, whether it's beer league or whatever sport you're playing. Like, you get yourself amped up, you're trying to mentally prepare, and it's just so bizarre because you're like, well, 99.99% chance this isn't happening, but for that 0.001, I mean, look at what happened to Scott Foster, man.
Was it a playoff game too, or was it right before the
down
playoff?
the stretch?
Yeah, it was down the stretch, and so the thing that I always think about with Scott Foster is like the amazingness of what he did and how unreal that experience was to just watch it, much less be him and like make those saves. But imagine if that had playoff implications. Like, imagine if they were 1 point out of the playoffs and they needed 2 points, and then all of a sudden and they're up by a goal. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think I'm really interested to see how the league treats this role moving forward, because if I were a GM and that was the situation and they were, fighting for every point to make the playoffs and they had to deal with I'd be tearing my hair out.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. So it's just bizarre. It's just one of those things that you do not see in any other professional sport anywhere in the world.
You told me a bit about this before when you were talking about sitting at MindSpark all day and thinking about it. What's your day like? Take me through the day in the life of an emergency backup goalie.
It honestly is it's a normal day, but again, you are fighting internally between, do I take this seriously? Do I hydrate all day? Do I go to the gym in the morning and get in that pregame workout? What do I really want to do here? Because if I take it too seriously, I burn myself out before I even get to Pepsi Center. If I don't take it seriously at all and I'm just ho-hum throughout the day, and then I get to Pepsi Center and oh my gosh, all of a sudden something happens and I'm caught unprepared, that would be a disaster, and that's not what you want. I mean, I'm a beer leaguer. I've been around the game most of my life. I take it seriously. So I try to balance it out between not taking it too serious and being like, oh, okay, here we go. I'm getting in this game. This is the night it's going to happen. And just making sure that, again, I'm respectful to the position. I'm respectful to the Colorado Avalanche for giving me this opportunity in the first place. Treat the game with respect, and the game will respect you in return. And so if I do get that opportunity, I know I'm ready. And so it's just trying to find that balance, man, just like anything else in life. And, you get to the game and you want to have the nachos, you want to have the beer. Nope.
Can't do it.
Can't do it.
Do you have to sign something that says you can't have a beer at the game?
No, but it's pretty obvious. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. And it sounds kind of funny, and I know this whole thing is bizarre, and it sounds kind of funny, but we do want to set want to set certain expectations, because we want to see this role thrive and grow, and we want to see it flourish, and we love just the fact that we're here talking about this is amazing, because most outlets and most people just, again, like you said, don't even know it exists. And so it is so unique, and it is so wonderful to have this kind of opportunity to be able to talk about it. That, yeah, I do want to take it as professionally as possible, but at the same time, still have fun with it and still be like who I am, just a normal beer league guy that loves goaltending, that loves hockey, and is just absolutely cherishing this opportunity.
So you walk into Pepsi Center, you're not having nachos, you're not having a beer.
Nope, I have some anxiety. I'm not afraid to admit that.
Do you bring your gear, by the way?
Yes. So the way it works is that we have to be at Pepsi Center a few hours before the game, drop off our gear. That's a cool experience because you come through the player's entrance and, you see some guys kicking the ball around. And you're like, yeah, I'm ready, bro. I'm ready. Like, here we go. This is going to be an awesome night.
Do they know you?
No, but they're always like kind of looking at you weird. Like, why is this random skinny dude like bringing his gear into the arena? Like, what's going on? But I think also some players know, like, oh, he's the emergency backup goalie. Like, all right, we'll rip this guy up if we ever get the chance. So you never, so I'm sure some guys, they give you the weird looks, but then other people, they're like, okay, we got you. And it's great. Like, it's awesome to like walk past the players. And again, the respect is there, which I think is the coolest thing. And that's one of the great things about pro hockey players is that they respect everyone and they do really handle themselves so professionally. And it's just, it's a cool experience. But yeah, it's like the anxiety is pretty high just because, like this is a legitimate role and you do want to take it seriously, but also enjoy the experience as much as you can. And so for me, it's like just getting past the sweaty palms part and then making sure that I'm really dialed in during the warm-up, because that's usually when things will happen. Like goalies can get pucks from weird angles and guys are firing pucks when you're turning around to get pucks out of the net, and you could tweak things, and I mean anything can happen in a warm-up. So I always just make sure I'm there and watching both goalies as much as I can, watching every single puck. And it's kind of fun. Like again, you try and balance between not taking it too seriously but also respecting the position. And so yeah, you're dialed in during that warm-up, and then the goalies go off the ice and you kind of breathe a little and step back and say, okay, here we go. Like, all right, it's just a normal game. And then the first period, you're like, that's when I think the anxiety is a little bit high because it's so early in the game. Usually after the second period, that's when I relax, because if a goalie were to get hurt in the third period, by the time I would go down and get dressed, the game's probably pretty close to over. And so I know there are times when goalies do get hurt in the third period and then the backup goes in, there's no one on the bench, but I think it just kind of ends there because the odds of them actually having, the emergency backup having to go in are pretty slim because there's 5 or 10 minutes left in the game. So usually by the third period, that's when I'll like eat something. Usually it might be the first time I've eaten all day just because, again, the anxiety's high. I'm not afraid to admit that. Like, definitely feel the anxiety. And
we're going to talk about that too, because that's an important part of this whole interview too.
Yeah. But, so that's kind of it.
So where do you sit?
So past season, the first 2 years we would sit in like row 8 or 9 right by the VOM where the Avs come onto the ice. So we're as close to the locker room as possible. So that, if we do get the call, we can go straight in. This year, it's pretty cool. We're pretty close to the glass, even closer to being able to get into the locker room if we need to. So again, it's like every year the Avs do such a great job of like building it up and making it a more not more professional, but just things are getting organized more, I think, around the league. And so, it's just awesome to kind of see this growth over the last 3 seasons with this role.
Yeah.
So if you it all happens, both goalies go down, you have to go into the game. Are you doing all the superstitious stuff? You hopping over the line? You tapping your posts?
I'm honestly, I don't really have a lot of superstitions.
Really?
I don't.
You might be the first goalie I've ever met that doesn't.
I know. I'm bucking the trend here. There's one superstition that I have, and I wouldn't even call it a superstition. It's just like a thing. That doesn't really clear it up very much, but here it is. I do not put a water bottle on top of my net. And the reason for that is I do not want to give shooters a target, because the worst feeling is when that water bottle gets popped.
Yeah.
So why even give shooters a chance? So that's kind of weird. Like, guys are like, don't you want your water bottle? And I'm like, nah, I'm good. If I need water, I'll skate to the bench and get it.
You don't rock it. Varley used to, and I swear it was a superstition of his, that he would not put the bottle on the net until the first whistle.
Yes.
And then you would see the bench slide it over the ice all the way over to the goal line.
Right.
Did you notice that too?
I noticed, yeah.
I thought I might be the only person in the building who noticed that.
I thought he just forgot it a few games until you pointed it out.
I said it's like that every single game.
Yeah, and I think, as a guy that promotes goaltending and got the goalie guild and stuff, we try to like break down superstition versus just routine. And, you know, a lot of goalie coaches try and get away from that as well, because we don't want kids to develop superstitions, because we don't want them to rely on those things always having to be perfect in order to play well. So I think a lot of goalies, like, yeah, they have their quirks and they have their things, but I think they're mostly just part of a routine. Like, that's how they get comfortable. But if it doesn't work out, like if Varley were to get the bottle rolled and it rolls past him and into the net, like, he's not going to freak out and completely collapse. Or if the water bottle is accidentally empty or something like that, like, he won't have a spaz attack. You know what I mean? Like, so we try and get away from kids developing those superstitions, because then they start to rely on those to perform at their best, and just say, hey, yeah, if you have, you know, some quirks, that's fine. Or if you have the routine, that's good. So I would say my not having a water bottle on top of the net, yeah, that kind of like, that treads the line between a superstition, but it's more like, I guess, part of the competitiveness in me. Like, I'm not going to give you a chance to pop.
Well, you've got a good reason for it.
Yeah.
It's not a superstition.
exactly,
You don't
right.
want them. You don't want a target on top of or like, you know,
Right.
near the crossbar.
Oh, it's
You
a brutal.
want-
Yeah. And believe me, it's happened to me before. Like, before I started not having a bottle on top of my net. I mean, there were definitely times where that thing was soaring to the sky because I was
Yeah.
getting beat glove side. So, yeah, it's just, again, I don't really, you know, for me, it's like I always put the right piece of gear on first, which I think is really common in hockey. I love all black gear. So that's like a thing for me. But yeah, in terms of like superstitions or having to do like really quirky things, no, I guess it's pretty straightforward.
Do you tell your beer league guys that, hey, in case you were wondering, I'm the emergency backup goalie for the Colorado Avalanche?
I feel like every time I say that, I end up getting torn apart.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, it must be an ego thing. So
They light you up all of a sudden?
Yeah, because then, you know, they get the target on the back. But no, I mean, the guys that I play with are awesome, and we play at the beer league at DU, and it's a great league. And what's really cool this season is that we've been joined by Joe Sakic's two sons. So Chase and Mitch Sakic are playing for us, which is awesome. So my life's a lot easier right now because they've joined us for the season, which is really, really cool. So yeah, it's I think, again, to me, the less I think about it, the easier it is. But for something like this, obviously, it's great to be able to promote the role. Because, again, there's, 30 other teams out there where there's a group of guys that are doing this. And we try and talk as often as possible. There's some guys that I know and some guys that I don't. But overall, I think we just, really cherish the opportunity. And we try and downplay it because 99.9% of the time we're just going to the game and going home. It's just like experiencing it like a fan. But there is that 0.001% where maybe we have to be ready. And so you have to have that professionalism and you have to have that respect and sort of stay out of the way, but also be prepared if something happens. And, I take great pride in being 37 years old and in good enough shape and still talented enough to be able to possibly even step into a practice. And would I get torn up? Absolutely. But if a couple of pucks hit me, I've done my job,
Yep.
right? I've given them something to shoot at. And if I get that opportunity, whether it's in practice or, pregame warm up for a few minutes, it'd be one of the highlights of my life for sure.
Wow. What an interesting thing to find yourself into. Do you ever pinch yourself and say, what is this? What am I doing?
I grew up on a horse farm in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And this whole journey I've been on for the past 15 years in pro hockey, doing all this goalie stuff, I pinch myself every day. But I also go back to what I said earlier. If you respect the game and you respect anything in life, the respect will come back to you. And I've put endless hours into my craft on the ice, as a journalist, as a builder in the goaltending community. And to get this opportunity is absolutely a dream. And yes, I do pinch myself, but I also feel like I've put in
You've
the work.
earned it.
I've
You've
put in
earned
the
it,
work.
yeah.
And my friends that know me know it as well. My family knows, hey, you've dedicated your life to this position. I run a nonprofit foundation to help kids that can't afford the gear and can't afford these training opportunities. And, I have had this amazing opportunity to cover the Avalanche as a radio guy and doing podcasts and stuff like that. So again, I go back to the fact that there's just so much respect in this game. The Avalanche have so much respect for just a regular guy like myself. And I have so much respect for them because they easily could have given this opportunity to a million other people that are more talented and do have a little bit more, whether it's they played D1 in college or anything like that. But just the fact that I get to do this for a few games, and I believe the rule is that you age out at 40. Don't quote me on that. I hope I'm wrong because I'm getting close to 38.
Yeah.
So I want to do this as long as possible, but I do think if I get to a point where I don't think I'm ready, it's like, you got to hang up the skates and retire and pass on that role to someone else.
But it's still a pretty cool tradition that you were part of.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the Goalie Guild.
Thank you. Yeah.
What is the Goalie Guild? How did you start it?
Yeah, so the Goalie Guild started 10 years ago, and I was one of the first guys to just provide goalie-specific analysis on social media. So this was back when Twitter was just starting. And back then, there were no goalie blogs. There were no goalie writers, except for maybe a couple guys in Canada.
Was this a period before trolls? The magical time of Twitter?
No, definitely not, because you can
Okay.
imagine a Texan talking about goalies at a high level. A lot of people are like, what does this guy know about
Didn't
goaltending?
go over that well.
Didn't
yeah.
go over that well. I've had my fair share of naysayers, but again, just plug away and grind and focus on what you can control. And I think that was it. It was the fact that nobody else was really covering goalies and providing goalie analysis. And I've always felt like I've had a fairly good eye for the position. And again, it's my passion. Like I love just watching different goalie styles. I love learning about the differences between Swedish goalies and Finnish goalies. And I grew up loving Mika Kiprasov, and Henrik Lundqvist came out of nowhere. And you're like, why is this Swedish goalie so good? He's never played in North America before. I think I just became fascinated with the differences in styles. And being able to just drop that analysis on Twitter, I was able to kind of build this community really fast because no one else was doing it. So it's kind of like right place at the right time and zero competition because I was the only one crazy enough to do it like many, many times a night. It was almost unhealthy, but I was watching games every night. I mean, I was obsessed. And sometimes that's what it takes to become an expert in something. You talk about 10,000 hours and this, that, and the other. And the Goalie Guild grew really, really fast because nobody else was providing that goalie-specific stuff, talking about technique and strategy and style. And then I think I got my big break in 2011. That's when I got the opportunity to write for NHL.com. I did that for 4 years, and that led to the next step, which was joining USA Hockey as a goalie scout. So I moved to Minnesota and scouted for the NTDP and just watched a lot of hockey in Minnesota. The high school scene was outrageous there. It's amazing how many people go out to watch high school hockey in Minnesota. And I soaked up that culture for 2 years. And that's when, so that was like 2012 to 2014. And then I became obsessed with traveling overseas and studying Finnish and Swedish goalies because I had grown up, watching these guys that looked so unique. You talk about Dominik Hasek and the goalies that were just, back in the 90s when I first started watching hockey.
That was the era for goalies.
Yeah.
Man, wasn't it? And
Yeah, it
every
was.
goalie was so different.
Yeah, you got Eddie Belfour. I always bring him up just because his style was so different. But then you've got Dominik Hasek, who basically had a slinky for a spine. I don't think that he could stand up or sit up straight. I think he would just bend backwards. Like the dude was so flexible.
Man, and there was a method to his madness. And back then when I watched him, I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now, just because I've been watching these goalies evolve and the position evolve. And it is very standardized now. It's very structured. These guys are technical savants, right? Like they're just amazing. It's so hard to beat a goalie on a clean shot now. But back then, more goals were going in, but goalies were just so creative and so unique, and they didn't have the advantages with the gear, and they didn't have the size or the athletic ability. They didn't have goalie coaching on a full-time basis back then. I mean, the goalie coaching in the NHL is still a relatively new thing. So these were super creative, really gritty guys that just found ways to stop pucks in ways that you just don't see now. Unless it's, your occasional pad stack or, the windmill crazy sliding save. I mean, you still see it, but for the most part, these guys now are just so consistent with their movements. They're such gifted athletes that you just don't see the Eddie Belfours and the Haseks before.
Yeah.
I became really obsessed besides just like watching NHL goalies and breaking down NHL games. I became really obsessed with again, stylistic differences and cultural differences in other countries. Like, why are all these Finnish goalies coming over here, and why are their glove hands so good? Like, what are they doing to the goalies over there that make them? And then you go over there and you see the culture and you see Pesapalo, which is Finnish baseball. And then you start to understand, well, that's why some of these Finnish goalies are so good at catching pucks. And so it's this whole cultural thing. And I was just so lucky to be able to experience traveling overseas and studying the position from some of the top goalie coaches all over the world. And I think I came back from that tour. I wrote my second book, and then I said, you know what? This game has given me so much. It's time to give back. And so I left my job at USA Hockey. I moved back to Colorado in 2014, started working for my dad for the family business to make steady income, and then that allowed me to turn the Goalie Guild, which had been like this goalie analysis and independent scouting website, into a 501c3 nonprofit foundation, and that was in the summer of 2014. So since then, it's just been giving back to the goalie community. Like I said, it's a very underserved, I don't want to say under-respected, but maybe underappreciated position. And we are in need of more goalie coaches. We are in need of more goalies at the youth level. Like, we do need more gear for these kids. And even looking at something like gaming and esports, like how can we get more kids interested in goaltending, but get through kind of those financial barriers, because it is so expensive and it's hard to find a goalie coach. So when you do find one, they're pricey.
Well, and you were talking about your love for this and just how you love the craft. I would argue that in a lot of cases, it's tough to convince kids to do it. A, because it's expensive, but B, because it's not as sexy as being a forward. Because if you're a forward, you're the guy scoring the goals.
Yeah.
You're a defenseman, you're making sweet moves and stopping pucks, on shooters. But as a goalie, it's the most important job on the ice. And I would imagine it's tough to convince kids to want to go into something like that.
It is. But you know what? The kids that do gravitate towards it, whether it's the gear, like it was for me, just seeing these guys, like the first connection I made to goaltending was, oh my gosh, that's a knight in armor over there. And that guy's going into battle, and he is the last line of defense, and I want to do that. Like, I want to be the guy that's taken on it's like a warrior, and like, I love medieval stuff. I love middle-aged stuff, like Vikings and Game of Thrones and all that good stuff. Like, that just appeals to me. And so it was natural for me to gravitate to the goaltending position. So I think there are a lot of kids that naturally gravitate towards it. Like, they want to put on the mask, they want to wear the gloves, they want to hold the big stick and be on the ice, for the whole game, but they just can't afford the gear. Or their parents are like, you know what, like, that's great that you love that, but why don't you go play basketball? That costs like $5.
Yep.
Or there's like 10 basketball courts between here and home, but to go to an ice rink is 45 minutes in the other direction.
But then you can tell them that in beer league, like, you get a discount usually if you're the goalie. You don't have to pay as much. Sometimes they'll cover the goalie costs.
Absolutely. I think I can say I've been a professional goalie because there's been 2 times where a beer league team has paid me to come out and play.
Really?
Wow. Hey, $20. I will take it. That pays for my skate sharpening and a roll of tape.
They don't even pay you in beer?
There you go. You know what? Yes, but honestly, and I know this is heresy, but I'm not into drinking a beer after a hockey game. I just go straight to sleep.
Well, it's exhausting. Well, you spend playing goalie. You played goalie, didn't you?
Very briefly.
Oh, I got to hear this story.
Like street hockey level. I mean, this was not.
Okay, hey, that's all right.
Yeah.
Did you make some good saves though? Stop some pucks.
Get the glove up.
Probably the highlight actually. You mentioned this early on that you were in the club team at CSU. So I was actually also at CSU in 2001 and had some friends who wanted to try out for that.
Are you kidding?
And so we went out onto the roller hockey rink there. Yeah. And I had no gear, no nothing. We just had little rubber balls, and I was just standing there to give them something to shoot around.
Okay.
And that was as close as I got to playing at CSU.
You might have been there.
Wait, so you
might have been out there.
Oh my gosh, yeah, maybe we know.
We'll compare notes at the end.
Yeah, and I was saying earlier when I first saw the podcast and I saw the video, I was like, I swear I've seen you at a metal show somewhere.
I'm sure you have.
Are you metalhead?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that later because I was just at a Monomarth last week and it was good.
We're going to start a second podcast.
I have no idea what that is.
Nothing goes better together than hockey and metal. I just have to put that.
Well, you go to any hockey game and you'll hear metal. Yeah. It's the natural.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about mental health and goaltending. You were talking about the anxiety that you feel. I know that your charity, do you guys do a little bit of work with that?
We do.
And
we do.
How do you get that message across? Because so much of the game falls on a goaltender. And I imagine it's just unbearable Oh, what's this?
So a couple years ago, and yeah, I mean, goaltending is amazing, but it can be really, really tough because you are kind of on an island by yourself. Like, player goes off the ice after he makes a mistake, coach is right there to pat him on the shoulder. It's okay, no worries, you'll get it next time. And then they get a little break, and then they're back out there, and they can just move on. For goaltender, you're alone in that crease with your thoughts and no one to talk to and no one to hear you and no one to console you if something's going wrong or you're just feeling down. And the other part is, like, it is 90% mental because you have to find a way to clear your mind so you are just focused on the puck. And as soon as you're not focused on the puck, that's when you get hurt, or that's when, things start to spiral down. And so every game, every practice, you're almost battling yourself because you're trying to find that zone, that comfort level where you are just, breathing normally and you're not allowing these negative thoughts to come in, or you're not worrying about what's going to happen next or the goal that you just gave up. And to do that by yourself with no one to reassure you or no one to kind of help you get through that, can be really tough. And so for me, like, even though I've never been, diagnosed with depression or anything like that, I've always been very happy and very fortunate to have, like, very good mental health. Of course, I still experience anxiety, and I experience, times where I'm just, like, caught in this web of negative thought, because that's just naturally what's going to happen when you play this position. And so what I've experienced over these years, working within the goalie community, is that a lot of coaches want to help their kids. They see the signs and they know the kid is struggling, but they don't want to push the wrong buttons. So instead of going out and saying something, they're like, well, I'm just going to let this goalie do his or her thing. Like, I'm just going to let them do the thing. Goalies are different. Like, we don't want to get into their space. Instead of going up and actually trying to reach out to them, they just say nothing. And that, I think, is where I realized we have to do something to, promote mental health and start having some discussions about these things in the goalie community. And so that's where Lift the Mask came about. And so, again, it's just one of the initiatives that I created in the Goalie Guild. And it's been awesome because, I think a lot of times, so basically how it works is our foundation will cover the first $100 for professional health care. So if a goalie reaches out, or a parent reaches out, or a coach reaches out and says, goalie Joe is struggling and he needs some help or she needs some help, our foundation will cover the first $100 to, again, help break down that financial barrier and to just make it easier for that goalie to go in and talk to someone on a professional level. And it's really cool here locally. We have the University of Denver has a program called CPEX, which is Center for Performance Excellence, and it's right on campus. And these are amazing graduate students that are working with athletes every day, providing a lot of that assistance and helping athletes of all ages, create strategies to help them, perform better mentally. And so partnering with them to help local goalies, and then just having that outreach on the website, it's like, it's okay to not be okay. And it's, like, very, very normal for goalies to deal with some of these mental issues and to deal with some of this anxiety and depression. And let's just have a conversation. And so we give out these stickers, these helmet stickers, because it's a great way for a coach to just, like, slide that sticker over to their goalie and be like, hey man, I hear you. Like, I'm here if you need anything, if there's anything going on, like, if there's anything we can do to help you feel better, or get back to normal, or get over whatever they're dealing with. Like, there is a program out there. There's someone here that understands the position. There's a group that can help you get the help that you need. I'm by no means a professional, mental health care worker, but I still want to help. Yeah. And I think that's how 99% of goalie coaches feel. Like, they want to help, but they don't want to say the wrong thing, so they just say nothing. And that's not helpful.
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
Yeah. You got to say something.
Knowing how to take that first step.
Yeah. And it hasn't been easy for me. I mean, like I said, I've never experienced, like, real depression or anything like that. And so even in my very happy life that I've had, like, how can I still make a difference? How can I still help? And I do have this community. I do have this opportunity to get these stickers out to goalies all over the world. And so, again, it's just like, what can I do to give back to the game that's given me so much? And I think the most important thing is, again, like, giving the goalie coaches and maybe the parents as well, and even head coaches who have never experienced the position before, so they don't really understand what it's like to be a goalie. Like, hey, that head coach, if he's listening or she's listening, like, that's totally fine. You can still help your goalies. Like, you can just let them know that you're listening, and that if they are dealing with something, let's have a conversation and try and work through it. No one has all the answers.
Yeah.
And so, how do you have those conversations? How do you kind of erode some of those stigmas and just bring those walls down a little bit? And it can be really hard for coaches and for goalies. But this has helped. And so I think it's just, again, trying to normalize those conversations and normalize the fact that, like, yeah, we deal with anxiety. Like, I deal with it. Like, my palms get sweaty. Like, I was anxious coming in here because I haven't done a podcast in a while. But, like, dude, that's totally
You're
fine.
doing a phenomenal job.
Thanks. Once I start rambling,
I say, no, you're good. No, you're good. No, you're doing a great
So
job.
good,
I think we should point that out.
Yeah, thank you.
You should feel good about yourself.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
You were one of the most anticipated guests on this show, and
Awesome.
You have lived up to that anticipation.
Cool.
I do think it is something that doesn't get talked about enough. We talked on this show a few weeks ago about how Nathan McKinnon was on Spit and Chicklets and was talking to the host of Spit and Chicklets about how he found a sports psychologist who's helping him out. Because if you see him, I mean, he's one of the headiest guys out there. You can see when he gets angry and he gets frustrated. And we were just talking with Tom Green before you came in here about how I noticed that during media timeouts, he'll skate around their zone and like around a face-off circle and flip his stick. And I think maybe that's something he's been taught by the sports psychologist to like try to get out of your head, because basically everybody on the ice is gunning for him now.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, like, one, it's okay to not be okay. Two, what can we do to develop some strategies to help whatever it is you're dealing with? And I've heard some amazing ones, and I'll tell you one that I heard from one of the most legendary goalie coaches of all time, Mitch Korn. And Mitch Korn told me a story once about a goalie that was really dealing with a lot of anxiety. And how this goalie figured out this strategy is beyond me. I don't remember that part of the story exactly, but basically what this goalie did is he took his wife's perfume from home and sprayed it on his blocker and on the inside of his blocker. And so anytime he would get really, really anxious, or really like he was dealing with, those symptoms, he would like real quick take a sniff of that blocker, and the smell of his wife's perfume would calm him down.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's something.
And so like it's just about like realizing like it's okay. Like when I hear now like a professional hockey player, an amazing player is going to see a sports psychologist, I'm like, that's amazing. Like that guy is giving himself a chance to not only help himself, but he is normalizing this for everyone out there.
It's about damn time that we all started talking about this.
Yeah.
It's true, because this is, I think everyone, Jordan Chavez here at the station has done a lot of great work about this and trying to get the word out, because he suffers with anxiety. And he talks about how when he goes to a therapist, he doesn't necessarily consider it, I'm going there because something's wrong. It's more of, I'm going there because my mind is just like the rest of my body, and I need to make sure that my mind gets a checkup just as much as my body does when I go to the doctor. And he said that, and it impacted me, and I'm going to go see someone, and I think everybody should. If we don't talk about this thing and make it more normal, we're going to continue to struggle, and it's not worth it.
Absolutely. And Corey Hirsch is a well-known former professional goalie who's an analyst now, who has really helped the goalie community by coming out with his issues and the suicide ideations that he had. And then there's another goalie that came out. Clint Malarchuk was before Corey Hirsch, and Clint Malarchuk has the book, and I'm not sure if you guys remember, he was the one that had his throat cut, I think in the 80s, and that was I
do remember that.
Yeah, for the, I think, Buffalo Sabres. And so Clint Malarchuk was kind of the first goalie to come out and share his story, and that was extremely impactful. And then it was Corey Hirsch. And then it was a goalie by the name of Ben Meisner, who is now playing in Germany. And then after that, the big one was Robin Lehner. And Robin Lehner, I had the amazing opportunity to meet him at an NHL goalie camp in Madison a few years ago. That dude was so intimidating. And this was when he was really struggling. Like, he was in the middle of his drinking issues and everything else. And he just looked angry. And I didn't want to get anywhere near him, because you knew he was dealing with something. But again, the same thing. Like, I'm not going to go up to a guy like I admire this man. I'm trying to stay out of the way. I'm there to do the video, not to coach, or you know what I mean? So that was the situation. And when he came out with his story and he shared that with the world, it really hit me, because it's like, you can't just let those things go. Even if it's, amazing guy, Robin Lehner, and I'm the video dude for this NHL camp. Like, what could I have done to been like, hey man, like, I love you, like, you're an amazing goalie, like, I wish you the best. Like, anything positive that you can put in his sphere of stuff that he's dealing with. And I feel like that with everyone now. Like, if I ever see anyone that's struggling at work or is having a bad day or whatever the case may be, it's like, I just want to go there and be like, what can I do? Like, what's going on, man? Like, how can I, start a conversation or just get them to know that someone's there and like appreciates them or at least is there to like talk.
We got to stop asking, how's it going? Just as a mindless question and more of a, how's it going? No, I really mean it. I think it's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Justin Goldman, I cannot thank you enough for coming in here. This is fascinating. If folks want to get in touch with you in the Goalie Guild and the foundation, how do they do that?
Pretty much any major social media platform. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's all at the Goalie Guild. And also now with MindSpark Learning, which is really exciting because we're taking their education model and replicating it in the sports world. So a lot of the stuff we just talked about, I'll be doing now for MindSpark Learning, which is really exciting. And we're based in Lakewood. So any of those locations, you can find me, or you can find me at a handful of Avalanche games.
I'll find you at a beer league.
Yeah, find me at beer league. Yeah,
and I'll probably fall in your crease and dislocate my elbow again.
Yeah, just get out on the ice with us. I'm ready to take some shots. So
you're a good man.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. We got to go to a metal show sometime.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just do this. Is that the metal
throw
thing?
the horns. Throw the horns.
They're throwing the horns.
Yep.
I'm cool. All right, we'll be right back.